the car began rising into the air, going up with us in it. And after a period of time of this sensation of extreme speed rising upward, being pulled by some force that would not let go, both actually of us found ourselves outside of the car. We were not any longer seeing it. We were in a circular room that was gray, just a nondescript gray. She and I were both standing there. There was a hallway in front of us, and there were several gray aliens that came over and took my hands and began walking me down the hall.
Can you describe the aliens? How high were they? Do they have hands, feet, face?
They do, yes, ma'am. They have very large heads. They're probably about 3.5 to maybe 4 feet tall. The eyes are very dark, slanted, larger than human eyes. The mouth is nothing but a slit. I didn't notice any ears. The nose, to me, all I could see was just a little, tiny little structure. It didn't look like it was really used. They're very thin. They do have 2 arms, 2 legs. The arms are longer than our arms. The hands are very different. The ones I saw had only 4 fingers, basically. One could have been a thumb and 3 fingers. They're longer. They had what appeared to be, to me, a kind of a fleshy pad on the end of the fingertips, almost like a suction pad, like on a frog type of thing. They're very non-human looking.
What did they do with you? Where did they brought you?
They brought me to a room that was brightly lit. They left Mother standing at that point. That was all I could recall, was that Mother was still standing back there. They brought me forward into a room which looked exactly, well, not exactly, but it's reminiscent of what a doctor's office would look like. It appeared to be a medical room. There was a table in there, and they led me over to the table. And somewhere in the process, I was disrobed, and they laid me upon the table and performed some kind of medical procedures. They appeared to be gynecological in nature. And after a time of performing these procedures, they finally got through with whatever they were doing. And then they got me on up from the table. The next thing that I recalled was being led out of that room into another room where this was a larger room. It was not as brightly lit as the medical room was. And in the center of this room was what looked like a man-sized tube, basically of glass or something clear, plastic, something. And standing in that tube was Mother, just standing there, unmoving. And when I saw her, I was very distressed. I had the feeling, I didn't know really if Mother was alive. You know, she was standing there, not moving, not making any motions. I was real upset.
And you, were you scared, madam?
Not terrorized, scared. Just confused. You know, where are we? What's happened? And the first part was similar to hers, of course.
You had the same story?
Up to the point where we're on board the ship. But I'm in this same foyer or area that we came out in on the ship. And I saw her and these 2 little creatures going down the hall. Their backs were to me. And I was somewhat depressed in the thing about the fact that she's going and I'm here, and I'd rather keep us all together. But she goes on and disappears. And seemingly a little bit of time passes and I'm looking around me to see what's going on. And then the next thing I know, I'm in that last room, the round one where that tube affair is. And in that room, I was never aware of the tube, but I did see the wall with the instruments on it. They looked like computer readouts, except they were scrolling from the right to the left instead of up and down like American ones do. And then after that, I'm zooming out of the bottom of the car, out of the bottom of this thing. And I looked up and saw this thing up over my head, the machine. And it had this iris eye on it that was just closing as we're going out. And we get back in the car.
It's hard because you do feel isolated, even though you are fortunate enough to run into other people who have experienced these things. You still know that there are a lot of people out there that you can't talk to about this. You can't tell them that I talk to the aliens every night, or whenever it is.
There's one person in the world who knows that you are telling the truth, and that's your mom.
Yes, thank God. Yeah, that probably helped me more than anything. If I had had only my own memories, it would have been harder, but because Mother and I shared that one, it's been a lot easier with having a family member who was there and said the same thing exactly, with no sharing, of facts beforehand.
After all these years, ma'am, how do you feel about the story now?
I never had any particular ill feelings about it. I was always interested in esoteric of one sort or another. So to me, it was just another part of it. I was a fairy tale reader as a child.
And you feel it as a fairy tale?
No, but it's easier to accept something that is a little outside of ordinary daily life if you have read a great deal in other areas. So it didn't come as any particular stunning to me that it could be alien life, because I had never had a belief that we were the only ones in the universe. It's ridiculous for us to have supposed that the world was all there was. So I had no problem accepting them.
Hi, I'm Lynn. I live in a small town in Arkansas. And I hope you'll forgive me. I knew that I was going to be scared to death, and I wrote the whole thing. So I'm just going to read it. My conscious knowledge of personal involvement with the abduction phenomenon began only 1 year ago. The event that led to the discovery of a bizarre reality in my life occurred over 20 years ago. Due to the unusual nature of the occurrence, I sought assistance last year and was referred to an eminently qualified professional hypnotherapist. And at this time, I would like to say that is John Carpenter, and I'm very grateful to him. After an exchange of pertinent information, it was determined that enough symptomology existed to warrant hypnosis to recover some possible blocked memories. I fully expected and I desired a mundane answer to my questions. Intellectually, I'd entertained the notion that alien life could exist somewhere out there, but I had never thought about it on a visceral level, and I had not thought about what it would mean to me on a personal level. 21 years ago, on a warm, sunny day, a family member and I had attended to some business in a large city in central Arkansas. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we left the city to begin the trip home, a trip of approximately 3 hours. We were both relaxed and in a pleasant mood. After 2 hours of driving time, we approached a small town. A road crew was doing some blasting on the highway that day and signaled the traffic in our lane to stop. We were the lead car, and there were 3 or 4 other cars behind us. After clearing the road, the crew allowed us to continue, and we slowly approached our turn at the junction of an intersecting highway. We both recalled seeing the turn, and then everything went blank. After an interval of grogginess, we suddenly found ourselves on an unfamiliar paved road with no road signs or other indicators of our location. The road appeared new and unused. Both of us were extremely agitated and began looking for a turnaround, hoping we would find familiar territory by turning back. We finally found a very small area that allowed us to turn the car in the opposite direction. After several minutes, we entered the town from the wrong direction, but we had not driven through the town to get there. We finally made our turn onto the intersecting highway and continued the drive toward home, extremely puzzled about what had just happened to us. The area was very rural, and the road was lined with large trees. Both of us felt a sense of unease and a desire to get home as soon as possible. After we drove a short distance, I glanced out the left-hand window and saw a silver object in the sky that seemed to be pacing us. I pointed it out to my family member who was driving. Neither of us could determine any identifying marks and heard no sound, although our windows were rolled down. We both wanted it to be an airplane, even though it had no wings or tail. I watched the craft for several minutes, and it continued pacing us, sometimes briefly hidden from view behind the large trees. Eventually, I looked away from the object, and when I looked again, it had disappeared. When we arrived home, we realized that we had lost about an hour of time somewhere during the trip. We told other family members of the strange occurrence and even returned to the town shortly afterward, specifically to try to locate the peculiar road we'd been on that day. The missing time plagued us off and on over the intervening years, and finally, after 20 years, I could no longer stand not knowing what had happened to us. I began a concerted effort to locate someone who could help us break through the amnesia of that day. Under separate, independent hypnosis sessions, my family member and I explored the events that had occurred during the hour of missing time. With no knowledge of what the other had recovered under hypnosis, our memories indicated substantive corroboration of an abduction by beings that were anything but human. Both of us recalled reaching the turn in the road and having a tremendous force physically lift our automobile into the air, with us still inside, unable to move. After a short period of time, we found ourselves in a round, seamless room with a domed ceiling. I reported that my family member and I were separated at this point as I was led down a hall. My family member stated seeing me led off down a long hallway by 3 alien beings, one smaller than I and 2 about my height. I was taken into a brightly lit room where a physical examination and other medical procedures were performed. My family member was shown several rooms during this time, as if receiving a tour of the craft. Finally, after a period of time, I was taken into another room where I rejoined my family member. We were released shortly afterward and re-entered our car, apparently having been placed on the wrong side of town. We turned on the engine and drove off, soon realizing that we were in unfamiliar territory. From that point on, our conscious memories had taken over. My questions had been answered, and the events of that lost hour were no longer missing. Several of my family members and I have explored many other shared and individual encounters in the past year, both consciously remembered and through the use of hypnosis. Invariably, the shared encounters have contained corroborative information. These encounters have occurred during both day and night. In my family, at least, the abduction phenomenon appears to be intergenerational and ongoing. It has shattered my complacency and belief in a small worldview and has forced me to see things in a more cosmic frame of reference. And that ultimately is why I'm sitting here before you today. From the reaction of my family, friends, co-workers, and myself, I know that the urge to deny the abduction phenomenon is very strong. But ladies and gentlemen, it is real. In the final analysis, the only defense we have against the unknown is knowledge. And it's in the hopes of gaining that knowledge that I accept future encounters. For knowledge will not be gained through denial. Thank you.
Ms. Lynne.
One thing that is real prevalent in all of this abductee thing is whether it's good or bad. And that was one thing that came up real early in my situation. And it was something that is very hurtful. It's not something I think that all of us need to be very, very nice and kind to each other, because we're all in it together. And the experiences that we have are very subjective. Each one of us, the same thing could be happening to every one of us, but we take with it our own baggage. And you cannot say that any person is wrong for feeling that it was negative or wrong for feeling that it was good, because I do feel that it is very subjective. And I think it's a hard enough situation that we just need to be good to each other. Don't add to the situation. We already have an alien problem. Don't make a human problem.